Hi, my name is Barry Sterling Mitchell. I produce the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings and the Bias Plus Reports. Today is December 4th, 2024, and this is Ben and Barry on football.
Hey, what's going on out there, everybody? This is your co-host. My name is Ben Dickerson. I'd like to start off the show as usual with a couple of Who Woulda Thunk Its. I only have two, and then we can get into the meat and potatoes of this thing. First one is kind of a random one. It's the most quarterback losses in the first 11 seasons of their career. I just stumbled over this. It doesn't mean anything about what's going on currently, except for one of the guys is a current player. So the most quarterback losses in the first 11 seasons of this quarterback's career. Third place, 89 losses in the first 11 seasons of Jim Everett's career with the Rams. Second place, 91 losses in the first 11 years of Archie Manning's career with the New Orleans Saints. And at the top of this infamous list, 92 losses in the first 11 seasons of the career of New Orleans Saints Derek Carr. Ugh. Not good, bro. Not good. And the other one, this is becoming quite a topic. The worst field goal percentage in the NFL is 70.3%, held by Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker, who before this season started, most people would probably say is most likely the best field goal kicker, or arguably the best field goal kicker ever in the history of the league. Okay, clutch, multiples in games, won games, and length over 60 yards. He had the record. I don't know who holds the record, excuse me, for the longest kick right now, but he did have it for some time. So you know what I think. He's got the yips. Mm-hmm. We talked about the yips before, right?
Yeah, you've used that term before, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes a golfer could be a huge golfer, and then all of a sudden, he can't make a putt. He can't make a 3-foot putt. There was a baseball player, played for the St. Louis Cardinals back in the 90s. This guy could not, he was a second baseman, could not throw the ball to first base. He would catch a grounder and go to throw the ball to first base and throw it in the stands. And he couldn't stop doing it. They had to move him to the outfield. That's the yips. It just happens all of a sudden. You get in your own head, and there's nothing you can do about it. Some people come out of it, some don't. But anyway, that's all I got.
Yips, eh?
Yips.
Got a qualified medical term right there, yips.
Yeah, right.
Oh, man. I do want to mention, at the end of the show, before we close out, I want to run over to Ben and Barry on football on our Facebook page. A few things came up that I shared over there. This are fascinating pieces of information. And just one of them, I'll just give a quick preview, just to give a thumbs up to Travis Hunter for making the NCAA All-Academic. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All-Academic. All right? This boy's playing both ways and killing it in the classroom. All right? So we want to talk a little bit. There's some other things that are on there. Very interesting weekend that just passed. Let's talk our numbers. How'd you do?
81%.
Wow. Is that a personal high?
Oh, I don't know. I think I might have hit 5 one time.
Okay. So you were tracking along with the bias plus.
For 2 of my wins went against the bias.
The bias was 87.5.
Okay.
I was like, holy macaroni.
That's very high. And let me say this. I don't know if this would strike you weird or not. Remember at the beginning of the season how goofy things were? And we even talked about it. And we talked about our, the preseason after the preseason and the extended preseason being the first 3 or 4 games, and things will start to settle down and all that. But it was a little bit stranger than normal. Now,
right.
right now, as we're zeroing in on the fourth quarter of the season, things are really starting to fall into place. Like the bias is on the mark. You know what I mean? Teams are who they are. So,
yeah, and some of these teams who are who they are getting it done. So let's take a look at the rankings. I explained the rankings today to one of our friends and followers, Mr. Mark Russell. And when I sent it to him in a text, and I think he finally gets it. He actually finally gets it. And I think that's a good thing, though. Sometimes, got to show a little extra something. All right, let's go to the numbers. The Sterling Net Point Power Rankings, which will be followed by the Bias Plus reports. And the rankings are for the completed weeks. So that would be through week 13. Bias Plus is going to be for the upcoming matchups in week 14. We are at week 14 of a 17-game season, Benny. And when we look at rankings, the thing that's now coming along with the rankings are qualifications and eliminations. So I don't have those really noted here. But let's take a quick look.
You mean what teams are eliminated?
Yeah.
I have that handy if you need it.
Okay. All right. I think I got it on here, but we can talk about it. As a matter of fact, it might be one of the things on our Facebook page I talked about wanting to go through real quick. In any event, those teams that are showing leadership are still pretty much the same group of teams. Starting off in first place, we always give love to our first place team in our 4 categories. That would be average net points, A&P, average points for, APF, average points against, APA, and average turnover differential, ATOD. Number 1 in average net points, that would be one Detroit Lions. I'm telling you, Detroit. Number 1 in scoring at 31.9 points per game. That would be those same Detroit Lions. Now, the way you get to number 1 in average net points is you get at least number 2, which is what the Detroit Lions did in average points against, but they're behind the team that's been holding on to this number 1 spot, Benny, for a few weeks now. That will be the LA Chargers.
Almost all the way through. I think they were only out of first place maybe a week or 2.
Man, that Jim Harbaugh boy, 15.7 points per game, all being allowed. And after spanking the spank on my beloved 49ers, those Buffalo Bills are still holding on to first place in average turnover differential and all that snow at plus 1.4. So again, congratulations to the Detroit LA Chargers and Buffalo for that first place. Anything to say about that, the number 1 teams, Benny?
I'll say something about the number 1 team and the number 2 team. According to people's eyeballs, especially a lot of the talking heads on television and the radio people, this last weekend when the Philadelphia Eagles went down to Baltimore and beat them, they were calling that game a possible Super Bowl preview. But according to our rankings and according to the way I'm looking at things numbers-wise, the possible Super Bowl matchup could be the Detroit Lions and the Buffalo Bills. That's the way things are trending right now. Of course, it's still early, believe it or not, folks. Still early.
I don't know about early, but there's still time. The jockey.
Okay, I won't say early then. There is still time. And there's a lot of things that can happen in the next, what do we got? 14, 15
more games.
We got 4 more games for some teams.
Well,
So
okay, yeah, it's 4 more games, because we do have buys
yeah, there
still.
was the buys this past weekend.
Talk about that also. But let's look at the top 8, Benny. That's what top 25% in terms of the numbers. Net point wise, Detroit, Buffalo, Philly, Green Bay, Minnesota, tied as a matter of fact, Washington, LA Chargers, and Pittsburgh. Benny, let me just say this about Washington real quick, because I'll probably forget when you start running your narratives. I now have a new name for Jaden Daniels, or I've added. He's now Magic. Jaden Magic Daniels, man. That's what I'm calling.
Okay.
He's doing some stuff, man, getting it done, at a high level. We did have a little memory that we dropped back on that Magic Johnson visit to Philly, where he messed up our whole thing in that championship series. So we know about these rookies that can come in there and disrupt stuff. We've seen that happen. But yeah, congratulations on the net points. Again, your net points is the difference between your points for and your points against. So that's a simple subtraction. In terms of scoring, your top 8, Buffalo, Baltimore, Washington, Tampa Bay, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, and Green Bay in the top 8. Now, again, this is the top half that you're taking a look at. Come visit www.sterlingnppr.com. Take a look at it, find out where your team lands on these different rankings. Again, we don't make this stuff up. This is their actual numbers, okay? You'll notice Pittsburgh and Kansas City, 10th and 11th, down in the 24-point range. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Defense wins championships, we say. The Chargers being 1, Detroit coming in 2, Denver coming in 3. I think you guys are going overlooking Denver a little bit, just a little bit.
Not me. I've been riding them in fantasy on my main team all season.
Are you serious? You getting that?
Man, before I started playing them, I was 0-5. I'm now 6-6, 7-6.
What?
Yes.
That's a win streak right there.
Yep.
That's some offense.
Second place in my conference and still pushing.
All
of course,
right.
they're on the bye this week, so I got to play somebody else.
Yeah, you got hey, you got the list right there. I don't know if you can get somebody depending. But
I'm good. I'm good.
That Philly defense is getting a lot of kudos nowadays. They got a guy named Mitchell, so you got to watch them guys. Minnesota, Minnesota. We talked about how good their defense was. I think we expected Minnesota to be like number 1. The B-flow defenses. Then we wondered whether or not people started to figure it out. One thing I know about a B-flow defense, or any defense like that's giving you some trouble. One of the things you do is you change your tempo. You go into a fast situation and you make them start to get reactive. Sometimes you can get some things off, and I've seen some teams play like that against Minnesota. They just pick up the tempo a little bit on them boys, and then all your intricate stuff now, you got to get to the line of scrimmage and figure out what they're doing. So not bad. I see a tie between Buffalo and Pittsburgh on defense. I can't remember the last time I saw Buffalo and Pittsburgh so closely related on defense. It's hilarious. And Kansas City filling out that A spot, giving up 19.6 points per game. So between the LA Chargers at 15.7 and the Chiefs at 19.6, and all in between is your top 8. And then turnover differential, we do have Pythagorean calculation that we use to get a point value for turnovers. Buffalo being number 1, Pittsburgh in second place, Benny. That helps your defense tremendously. LA Chargers, there they go, at 0.9. And this is plus, again, net points and turnover differential can be plus or minus. The top 8, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Chargers, Chicago, Houston, Green Bay, they're all tied at 0.8 plus 0.8. Then Detroit comes in at plus 0.7. So they're all pretty close, Penny. Minnesota finishing up the eighth place at 0.4. So then you get the Washington, Rams, Philly. So that's not really bad. So that's a pretty competitive group. I only want to point out, again, Baltimore. When you go down to the bottom half of the rankings, you see Baltimore's defense down there, allowing 24.5 points per game. That's 23rd place. Strangely enough, sitting right next to Chicago's offense. So Chicago's defense is in the top half. Their offense is in the bottom half. Okay. As is the LA Chargers offense. So that's always going to be the Chargers. The question, can the Chargers put the points up? That's going to be Denver's question too. Denver just had a big outing. So we're about to wrap up the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings. Again, they're all here for you to come and peruse, see where your team comes in. Why are the Carolina Panthers in absolute last place? Giants, your Giants, Benny, 15.3 points per game. Last place. Carolina, last place on defense. That's one way you get to be last place on offense. And then turnover differential with the Vegas Raiders carrying the last place there. So, last words, final words on the net point rankings?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to switch that back up to the top half. I'm looking for Broncos in points for. There we are. Denver sitting at number 13. Let's remember, folks, not only are the Denver Broncos winning games with a really nice defense that's ranked in our rankings in points against at number 3, but they're also having their offense run by a rookie quarterback, probably the lowest rated rookie quarterback coming into the draft at the beginning of the year. For some reason, and I'm not going to say he's superior to these other quarterbacks in arm strength or accuracy or this or that. All I know is him and his coach, Sean Payton, are two peas in a pod. I have rarely seen a rookie quarterback head coach combination that goes together as well right off the bat as these two. Watching the Denver Broncos is really fun. It's really, really fun. And besides Courtland Sutton, their receiver crew is basically all new and all young guys. So he didn't get handed, a DJ Moore and a Keenan Allen like Caleb Williams did. Yet they're playing extremely well. Now, the fact that their defense is playing so well obviously helps. Okay. But let's face it, I got to give them some props on offense. I expect to see them rise up that points for category in the next few weeks also. I think I looked at their schedule coming up, and I believe that they got a couple of games that they should be able to put away pretty nicely. And when they score big, man. They score big. So looking forward to watching Denver coming up. Cincinnati, what a conundrum that team is. Number 6 in points for, and an offense that can be prolific, but in points against, they're next to last. Unbelievable. What do you call that?
Ranking differential.
Oh, right. That's right. You have a name for it, right? I was going to say divergence or whatever the word is. That's crazy.
Between where they rank on one part of the ball and where they rank on the other side.
Right.
Experience. So,
yep.
Yeah. Them and Baltimore, big ranking differentials.
Yes.
Crazy. And I mean, but Cincinnati's quarterback, right? I'm messing up his name. I mean, this guy's playing lights out. This guy's like firing defenses up out there. And they they
Joe
got.
Burrow is a great player.
Thank you, because I'm messing up his name. And then they got receivers that we think they get their contract and be gone because these guys is amazing, and so that the vibe there is not right. I think that's part of it. The vibe is not right. There you go. There's a football term for you. Well, okay, ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
To the Bias Plus reports for week 14 of the 2024-2025 season. Again, the Bias Plus reports is where we take those differentials in a matchup, and the team with the highest net points is generally going to be what we call favored, and the difference you'll see in that number is why they're favored there. Let's look at Thursday. You like where I got that up there, Benny? Thursday night.
Yeah.
Packers at Lions. Bias Plus score 8.1 favors the Lions. That makes sense, right?
You think that makes sense?
Absolutely.
Oh, you mean the bias makes sense?
Yeah.
Or the fact that the Lions are favored makes sense?
Both.
Yes, I would say that makes sense. However, well, let's get into it. So the Packers are 9-3. The Lions are 11-1 with a bullet, as they say in the record business. Lions will be the home team here. Let's talk about them first. Now, last weekend, they scored on their first 4 possessions at home against the Bears. First 4 possessions they scored. A Jared Goff touchdown pass to Sam Laporta and 3 Jake Bates field goals gave them a 16-0 halftime lead. Another Goff to Laporta touchdown pass late in the third quarter made it 23-7. Seemed like they were running away with it. But an accumulation of defensive injuries, let's remember, we were just complimenting Detroit's defense along the way around middle of the season and getting going further, but they've sustained a bunch of injuries. They, in fact, lost 4 defensive players during this game. That's crazy. But anyway, while that was going on, the Chicago Bears kind of scratched and clawed their way back into the game and into position to tie the score at 23 and take the game into overtime. But in the overtime, they mismanaged the clock and blew their chance, making the final score a win for the Lions at 23-20. I will go into that mismanagement when we get to talking about the Bears later on. Now, the Packers took command early with a balanced attack that they never let the Dolphins threaten and a stout defense, and they took care of business 30-17. It was the 7th win out of their last 8 games. Jordan Love connected with number 1 wideout Jaden Reed for 2 touchdowns, and Josh Jacobs had 1 on the ground, and they had no turnovers at all. The defense shut down the Miami run game, and they recorded 9 tackles for loss. They sacked Tua 5 times, and they hit him 6 times. The Lions should be favored in this game as they are. However, this is a bit of a trap game, I would think. The Packers have shown some pretty good signs of life here lately, and they really did handle themselves very well against the Dolphins, but they were at home for that one. I think to be on the safe side, I don't know. A lot of defensive injuries, especially in that secondary. I'm going to take the Packers to pull the upset.
Well, one thing I did do with this, and this is because of some things I'm thinking about doing with the net point rankings in the near future, but just to kind of understand where Vegas stands on these games, especially relative to what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. Vegas is -3 favoring the Lions right now. So what's that, a field goal?
That's a field goal.
And they're home.
Right.
That's the home field advantage. They give it to them like that. And you're absolutely right. We always mention, these are based on what you've done through the season and, over that season. They can't necessarily account for last week's injury. Quarterback goes down, you got a brand new quarterback, your numbers under that new quarterback probably won't reflect what's been happening all season, unless you got a really good backup, you know. But I mean, that's just what it is. But at least you know what the numbers were. That's your point of reference. So when if it goes up or goes down, you know how that diverges. But you've decided to go against the bias and go with those Green Bay Packers. All right. Well, I would say Chris would be happy, but he's been running around in the Eagle jersey so much. I don't know.
Dude, I was going to say something to you about that later.
I've tried to.
What's he doing, man?
Man, and
Bro, you raised him better than that. I know you did.
Okay, thank you. It makes me feel.
I'm with you. Don't worry.
Jamie effing Christmas.
Sheesh.
All right, Benny. So Jets at Dolphins. Bias plus score 1.2 favors the Dolphins. I actually did a little research. I don't know if I see it here, but it had to do with here it is. This is an AI result of me questioning how has the Miami Dolphins offense performed since Tua returned from injury, and they said here the offense has been more dynamic, right? With Tua at the helm, they scored 27 points in each of his first two games, and their expected points added on offense ranked second in the NFL during those weeks. His third down efficiency is at 60.4% over the past 4 games, which is higher than the Kansas City Chiefs at 51.9%. His playmaking ability, using his mobility to extend plays, has added a new dimension. However, despite those improvements, he's faced challenges, including a higher sack rate when pressured and a lower average depth of target compared to last season. So he's throwing shorter, and then they do say that he struggles in cold weather games.
I couldn't wait to get to this one. So it's kind of ironic that we went to this game next.
Really?
So anyway, so the Dolphins are favored in this game against the Jets. So let's talk about those Dolphins since we started off talking about Tua. So last week you were on your soapbox about Tua Tagovailoa's MVP candidacy becoming a thing. I said that.
Conversation. Just the conversation.
A conversation.
That's all.
Well, if it's a conversation, then it's a thing. Because if it's a conversation on one show, it's a conversation on 20 shows. And they're going to talk about it for at least a couple of days, if not the entire week.
Well, they ain't talking about it at all, I can tell you.
They're not talking about it now.
Yeah, sure.
Because in order for that to actually become a conversation, they would have had to pull off a victory over Green Bay in Green Bay. And if I may quote myself from last week's show, because I went back and rewatched it, I said, I don't care if it's 65 and sunny, the Packers are going to beat Miami. I also predicted that this one got me here. I also predicted a wind chill factor of 15 degrees. The actual wind chill factor at the beginning of that game was 18 degrees. So I just missed it.
Man.
Now, yeah, that was close.
That was basically that, man. We're going to have to call you the weatherman.
Yeah, right. Anyway, down 27-3. It took the Dolphins until midway through the third quarter to thaw out enough to show signs of life on offense. Thanks to Tua, who actually wasn't bad himself. 37-46, 365 yards, 2 touchdown passes. They were able to
let me just say this real quick, just from your number, right?
Yeah.
No Tua struggles in cold weather. He has 46 throwing attempts.
He threw the ball 46 times, yes. And they were able to finally score in the second half to avoid completely embarrassing themselves in a blowout, which ended up 30-17. Now, I'll tell you this, part of him having to throw the ball 46 times is negative game script. They fell behind so badly, and their run game got shut down before they even gave up on it. So
That's
yeah,
that's right. That's it right there.
that's it right there. Yeah, really. So let's see. They're playing the Jets. Oh boy, Jets are 3-9. At least they get to see some good, nice, warm weather down in Miami. I assume it's pretty nice down there right now. So in their game against Seattle, they traded punts with Seattle in the first half, and then the Jets forced the Seahawks 3-and-out, and Aaron Rodgers led a drive that finished with a touchdown pass to Devontae Adams. So they finally got on the board. That was in the first half. Also in the first half, Seattle fumbled the ensuing kickoff, and the Jets recovered, and Rodgers throws for a second touchdown to Isaiah Thomas. Now they're starting to take control of the game. Then the Seahawks finally scored, only to have Kene, I hope I'm not saying this, getting the guy's name wrong, Kene and Wagwu return the ensuing kickoff 99 yards for another Jets score. Now the score is 21-7. This is crazy. I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, Aaron Rodgers is going to have the biggest smile on his face when he comes on the Pat McAfee show because they had a big win. They got the ball right back again when the Seahawks fumbled the next kickoff. So everything's going their way. But just when I thought the Jets were going to start to run away with this thing, Aaron Rodgers throws a pass that gets picked off and returned 92 yards for a Seahawk touchdown by 6'5", 300-pound, ex-New York Jet, ex-New York Giant, defensive end Leonard Big Cat Williams. He was rumbling, bumbling, but not stumbling. He put Seattle right back into the game, 21-13. All of this happened by the middle of the second quarter. That's how the game started off. It was crazy. At this point, the Jets never posted another point, and they lost the game 26-21. There's no way in heck I'm ever going to pick the Jets to win another game, I don't think. I have to look at their schedule. But right now, they are a mess. I'm going with the Dolphins, and I believe going with the bias.
Well, with the bias, the Vegas is actually -6 favoring the Dolphins.
That's a touchdown.
And the other thing I just remember saying about the Dolphins, and I was just very disappointed that they had no power game. I mean, they got up on a goal line, and it looked like they had no idea what they really wanted to do. And I guess what you were saying about them getting a run game shut down, but again, you don't have a power game. As a matter of fact, who was it? Was it the Eagles today? I think they said signed a fullback. They signed it. They brought a fullback on. So, and my post was, in the age of, 300-pound fullbacks, as they have in Baltimore, and what did you say Derrick Henry was 245?
At least, yeah.
At least, much less to mention the tush push. That's a power game right there. That's one of the things is what's coming. You can't stop it. We are going to overpower your defensive line and move this ball. And sometimes football just comes down to that. So that's the thing that worries me about the Dolphins. You can't get your run game shut. This thing worries about me about my Niners, but that's another story.
Yeah, and we talked about teams having an identity and organizations trying to decide what kind of team they want to have, what kind of defense do they want to have for their main scheme, and what type of offense they want. It's pretty obvious that the way the Dolphins are built on offense, they're built for speed. They want to beat you with speed, okay? And you can do that to a certain extent with smaller linemen, smaller, faster linemen. It can work, but if you fall behind, you're in a lot of trouble. And if you get in a position where you need a yard for a first down, or you're third or fourth on the 2 or 3 and you're trying to score, you could be in trouble. You know, you're doing something like you're doing a lot of play action, you're doing a lot of bootlegging, you're doing all the things that you have to do when you can't just hand the ball to somebody and just push the other team out of the way. You've taken that part of the offense away from yourself when you have no power game. And that's where they find themselves right now.
Well, it's one of those things that I always talk about with football teams is you have to have different types of games because you have different situations. You know, you have to
Right.
be that. Some situations is just. I'm looking at the Eagles playing the Ravens. They're doing a replay. It's 3rd and 6, and he throws a deep bomb to AJ running down the sideline. And it comes to my mind, I'm like, you didn't have a 6-yard play? You know, it's 3rd and 6. Now it's 4th and 6. You didn't have a 6-yard play? That should have been like automatic. You know what I mean? But that's part of your power. That's when you have a tight end. You know what I mean? Somebody that can just overpower that guy. You know who had a power game that you probably, and we talked about a lot, probably, you know, don't think of it this way. Tom Brady. Because he had the Gronk. That was his power game. Remember I said when in doubt, drop him?
Yeah, well, if you want to look at that, that's an individual power game of a guy who has the size, speed, and catching ability that can pretty much give him an advantage over any defensive back.
Everybody. Yeah.
Obviously, too fast for any linebacker to cover, too big for a regular sized corner to stop. You know what I mean? And if he catches the ball and the safety tries to tackle him, he's probably going to get run over. So yeah, that's every team would want a player like that.
That's a power game. Yes, you know. You get to the goal line, you better put 12 people around him because the ball's just going to go popped up in the air in his direction. He's going to be slamming that thing on the ground.
And just having him there allows you to do other things because he draws so much attention. So yeah, and when you build your offense, you definitely want to try to be as well-rounded as you possibly can.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Things just haven't worked out for them because they kind of went overboard with the speed thing. But speed is great for position players, but you got to have a husky offensive line, a skilled husky offensive line. You know what I mean?
And you have to be able to adapt to the different playing conditions, you know, and sometimes that's where your power game comes in, you know. You're in the snow. Let's go. All right, Benny. You're going with the Dolphins going against the Jets. On that conversation. Let's move on. Oh my goodness, Benny. The Falcons at the Vikings. Last plus score of 12.9 favors the Vikings. All right, let's hear this.
Oh boy. Let's talk about the Falcons first. They're 6-6. They're going to have to go on the road up to Minnesota. No worries about the weather though, because they play indoors. Now, the NFC South title is still up for grabs, but the Falcons didn't help themselves with their 3rd loss in a row, coming at home to the LA Chargers by a score of 17-13. Bijan Robinson had a good day on the ground, but Kirk Cousins had a horrible day. You know I love Kirk Cousins, and you know the city of Atlanta loves Kirk Cousins. And for most of the season, Kirk Cousins has been getting it done. But his flaws are beginning to show up. I've seen guys, especially quarterbacks, start to slowly lose their skills, kind of like Aaron Rodgers. And I've seen guys fall off a cliff. Kirk Cousins looking like he got one foot on the cliff or hanging off the cliff and the other foot on a banana peel. That's where he is right now. He had a horrible day through the air. He was 24 of 39 for 245 yards, 0 touchdowns, and he threw 4 interceptions. Oh my God. One of them was a pick six on a day when the Chargers offense couldn't find the end zone and only put up 3 field goals. That's crazy to lose that game. The Vikings, on the other hand, played the Cardinals. Both teams are in second place in their respective divisions. So hanging on to playoff positioning is very important to both of these teams, and being division champs in either the North or the NFC West is still in play for both of these teams. So this was a very, very important game. Minnesota was at home, but they got off to a slow start. Aaron Jones fumbled on the first play of their first possession. Luckily for them, the Cardinals couldn't find the end zone either, and they ended up only 9-6 at halftime, or only down 9-6 at halftime. Cardinals were up. 2 second-half touchdown passes by Sam Darnold and 2 second-half interceptions by Kyler Murray made the difference, and the Vikings won the game 23-22. Again, the Falcons are in position to still win their division, but it's going to come down to them and the Buccaneers. The Vikings still have an opportunity, although some people would think it's slim, to win the division over the Detroit Lions. So they're both sitting pretty for playoff position at least, and possible division championships. But in this game, after the way the Falcons looked against the Chargers, I most definitely have to go with the Vikings on this one. And Vikings got the bias, right?
Yeah, the Vikings have the bias. And when I looked at, again, Vegas, Vegas has the Vikings favored by 6. So that kind of goes along with it. 2 things. Number one, I know you love Kirk Cousins, and you know I like to make fun of Kirk Cousins. So to me, that was a very Kirk Cousins game. He's catching up on the mind farts that he hasn't had in a while. But that's just I'm just really joking about that. One thing the commentators were trying to mention, where they were saying something to the effect that none of his passes went over, I forget, so many miles per hour. They were really questioning the velocity of his passes. That one interception he threw in the end zone, where he just lobbed it up to the end zone. There was like 5 guys sitting there from the Vikings. I'm like, dude, you think you're gonna lob that over 5 guys to one? Just
yeah. Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say sometimes you see quarterback skills deteriorate slowly, and some guys start to deteriorate quickly. Some just fall off cliff. Some guys just wake up one day and they can't throw no more. It happens.
They're talking about starting the backup now. What they should be.
Michael Penix. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Now they have to think very carefully about this, because they're still sitting pretty to make the playoffs in a good position, and they still, although it might be a slim opportunity, they still have an opportunity to win their division if something goes wrong with the Buccaneers. So you might want to think twice before you do that. You know what I mean? You decide you're going to hand this over to a rookie now who hasn't played but a couple of snaps during the season, and things fall apart and you don't make the playoffs, or you get clubbed in the first round, then people are going to talk about you. You know what I mean? You stick with Cousins and he keeps screwing up, then they're going to say, man, you should have just went ahead with the rookie. But I tell you this, if they weren't in such good position from as well as Kirk played during the season already up to this point, I wouldn't be mad at him if they did put Penix in. But they're in a position now where it's a little tricky. You don't necessarily want to pull that trigger yet.
Well, it sounds like you're kind of saying Kirk should have a short leash. Short leash. You know,
it's just a bad time.
It's 6s, and it'd be like, okay, Kirk, come on over to the sideline.
But they've been winning games. But they've been winning games up to this point. So
no, but he hasn't played that. He hasn't been throwing INTs like that up to this point.
That's right. That's one game. We're talking about one game.
I'm saying, he's been doing well.
That's my point. Yeah. That's why you can't just say, oh, he threw 4 interceptions, benching. You can't say that.
Okay, I'm not saying they should bench him. I agree with you on that.
If they only had 3 wins, yeah, go ahead. But he's gotten them to the point where they're at now. There's no turning back at this point.
Well, let's put it this way. As far as you're concerned, The bias plus score of 12.9 favoring the Vikings.
I'm taking Vikings.
You're taking the Vikings. So all of that being said, go with the Vikings. All right, let's move it along here. Next up, Panthers at Eagles. Let me just say this much, man. I am glad to see Bryce Young having some level of success. I'm glad to see it. I mean, he was a great young man. You know, we feel like, you know, he shouldn't have been the first pick, you know, but he was. And so you go to the not necessarily the best team, unlike, you know, Caleb Williams, and he gets down there and they just really, really struggle. And I kind of felt for him, you know, and we saw physical deficiencies and all that. But he's playing a little bit better now. He's finding his way around at NFL speeds, you know, and not taking too big of hits and things of that nature. I mean, the bias plus score of 23.3 does favor the Eagles. Let's not, you know, but I am glad to see him have a little bit of success. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and I agree, but you can't argue with a 3-9 record. I mean, that's not all his. You know, Andy Dalton had part of that under his belt also. But last weekend, Carolina came very, very close to a huge upset over their division rivals and first place in their division, that NFC South, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, since he's being reinstated as the starter, like you said, Bryce Young has looked far better than when he was benched earlier in the season. Still, I have concerns for the Panthers and for him. First of all, this game was close throughout, and Carolina actually held a 13-10 lead at halftime. And they didn't give up the lead until halfway through the fourth quarter. And even then, it was only 17-16. Why they only ran the ball 21 times is a mystery to me. With the score that close throughout, they should have really been pounding the rock. Chuba Hubbard's been running really, really well for them, but they seem to have abandoned the run. I don't know if it's like Bryce looks so good, they just want to keep on pumping him. But here's the problem. They let him throw the ball 46 times, and he only completed 26 passes. Now, he threw for a respectable 298 yards, no doubt about it. That's great for him. But that means he threw 20 incompletions. 20 incompletions. That's way too much. They should have mixed more run in there, man. Yet, the game was still close. The Panthers defense had their hands full with the Bucs ground game because the Bucs have no problem running the ball. They did keep Baker Mayfield under control, and they picked him off twice. But the bottom line is they lost the game when Chuba Hubbard fumbled in overtime. And oh, by the way, to some folks, it looked like, and I had to go back and check this on YouTube a couple of times, it looked like Bryce Young had a chance to maybe dive and recover that fumble, but he failed to do so. Shades of Cam Newton in the Super Bowl. Yeah. Yeah, that's for the same team, right? Right, yeah. So I had to make note of that.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
I've said it several times this season. I'm going to say it again. The Eagles once again got off to a slow start, but this time was a little different because they were penalized 6 times and fell behind 9-0 in Baltimore playing the Ravens. As bad as the first quarter was, the Eagles owned the second quarter against the Ravens with Jalen Hurts throwing a TD pass to Dallas Goedert and scoring on a tush-push from 1 yard out. Meanwhile, Baltimore could only manage a field goal. That field goal was all the Philly defense allowed until garbage time, and I believe Baltimore scored right at the end of the game, so it was no big deal. Hurts didn't have a great game through the air, but he had a couple of timely runs, and Saquon finally got it going again in the second half. He had 170 yards and 107 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown. The rapidly improving defense kept Lamar Jackson under control without assigning a spy to him. I thought that was pretty good. After I heard somebody say it, I went back and looked at some video. Their front line did an excellent job of gap control. There was really nowhere for him to run. I know he said in his post-game conference that his mom cursed him out because she thought he should have run more, but there was really nowhere for this guy to go in this game. The Eagles front line did an excellent job, linebackers too. They held Derrick Henry to 82 yards. I think he only got 19 carries, but that's within my 18 to 25, so I'm not going to make excuses for him. 82 yards is pretty good for other teams or other running backs, but Derrick Henry's got to do better than that. He just could not do it. He wasn't able to score. 19 carries he had. And the highlight of the game, just like last week, the highlight of the game was somebody blowing up Derrick Henry. Well, the highlight of this game was rookie cornerback Cooper DeJean's textbook form tackle on Derrick Henry. Stopped him in his tracks and took him off his feet. What a hit. Just like you learn in Little League. Just like you learn in high school, man. Put his shoulder down, wrapped, and lifted him up. It was great.
A lot of kudos for that.
A lot of kudos for that, and he deserved it.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, got to go with the Eagles and the bias on this one.
It was funny listening to one of the shows, Broussard, on Christmas.
First things first.
First things first. The Ravens are not a smart football team.
Every time we think they snapped out of it and realize who they are, they go right back to something else. And I said a week or two ago, I said, not only do they have to give Derrick Henry his good number of carries in order to control games and make sure they come out on the winning end, but Lamar's got to run more too. This whole thing about trying to prove you're a pocket passer and all, stop reading the paper, stop reading Twitter, stop looking at this stuff. Do what you do, bro.
The thing about that, as far as I'm concerned, is if they get Derrick Henry going, the pass opens up. As far as not worrying about being a pocket passer, it's there. It's going to be there because they're already up on the line. Your linebackers are up now. You can run behind them. Your tight end can flourish, and you can get back there and throw. It don't always have to be the dumb deep pass. It's get the ball out your hands to your weapons and let them roll. So he got Zay Flowers, get the ball out to him real quick. But I think they actually did toss something to Derrick Henry once in this game.
He actually got caught 3 passes.
Okay, I knew I saw him catch a pass, and I thought
I was looking for that. We talked about that. I was looking for that. But again, the Eagles defense was excellent. They played extremely well. I know we were talking about their new defensive coordinator, and you were saying that he didn't really show you much when he was down there with the Dolphins. And I had my doubts early in the season because he was trying to get the players that he inherited when he came here to play his style of defense. But I got to give him credit. He's taught them well, and I think he's tweaked the defense just enough that it now suits the players that he has, because these guys are playing lights out, man. Eagles defense, in the NFL rankings, they're number 1. Of course, their rankings are different from ours. Ours go by points, theirs go by yardage. But the Eagles are playing extremely well on defense. Got to give them credit for that.
Well, I was tough on him coming in, Vic Fangio. I didn't think he did much down when he was in Miami. But what I heard recently in a breakdown of what he's been doing is that he has been playing very, I'll call it, adaptive football. They're saying sometimes he's man like 100%. Sometimes he's zone 100%. He's mixing it up. He's got little man, little zone here. But situationally, and using the talent that he has, he seems to be doing a good job. So you really got to just give him his kudos for that. I believe Vegas also favors the Eagles. And if I'm looking here, they're minus 13 So they're 23.3 points on ours favoring the Eagles, and you're going with the bias. Sorry, Bryce. Maybe next time. However, next up for us is Benjamin, beloved New York Football Giants, hosting those weird New Orleans Saints who just lost Taysom Hill. He got crunched. What happened?
Yeah, he went down with a knee, I believe. But he's out for the season. That I know.
Yeah, he's done. He's done. And from what I understand, maybe for they were I'm listening to the guys, the running back for New Orleans,
Alvin Kamara.
Alvin Kamara, they're expecting him to be the beneficiary of Taysom not being there. And they said something like Kamara's been on a bit of a tear.
Kamara's been playing well.
Okay.
To actually be a beneficiary of Taysom Hill not being there, let's remember, usually when they use Taysom Hill, they bring him in like a wildcat situation and put him in the quarterback spot to take the snap and then hand it off, run it, pass it, whatever. Okay, Kamara can do all those things. So if Kamara lines up as quarterback in a wildcat, he strikes just as much fear, if not more, than Taysom Hill will. Now, of course, Taysom Hill is probably a better passer, but seldom does he pass the ball when he goes back there anyway. So, the other beneficiary of this will be the true tight end on the Saints, who is Juwan Johnson, who actually picked up on waivers on a couple of fantasy teams. His numbers should go up too. But anyway, they're going to miss Taysom Hill and his versatility. In their game against the Rams last weekend, they actually outgained the Rams and they won the time of possession against the Rams, but they struggled to find the end zone. Kicker Blake Grupe converted 2 of 3 field goal attempts in the first half, and they held a 6-0 lead at halftime. Once the Rams scored to open the second half, the Saints didn't get on the board again until 5 minutes into the fourth quarter when Carr finally found Marquez Valdez-Scantling in the corner of the end zone for a touchdown. And Kamara, we talked about, had a good game. He got off for 112 yards, but he wasn't able to score. And defensively, the Saints had no answer for the Rams offense in the second half at all, and they ended up losing the game 21-14. I want to say, I don't know what to say about my Giants. I really don't. I didn't even make any notes, I don't think, about their game. They played the Cowboys, so when we talk about the Cowboys, I'll mention them a little bit. But I think the Saints are going to pull this one out. If they do, which I believe that they will, that'll give them 5 wins and put them close enough to put a little fear into the Falcons and Buccaneers' hearts. So that NFC South is still pretty stout, pretty close, as it has been throughout the season. The Saints are not out of it yet. I'm going to take the Saints to beat the Giants. That would be with the bias.
So you'd be going with the bias and going with Vegas, who's giving the Saints their minus 3.5 points there, favoring the Saints. Rough for your gents. Rough for your gents. All right. Raiders at Buccaneers. Bias plus score 18.1 favors the Buccaneers. I mean, they got to come east. Well, they're coming from Vegas, not as far away, but kind of far.
Let's talk about the Raiders first, because I want to do this whole I promised everybody when we got to the Raiders that we would talk about their little mishap at the end of their game against the Chiefs. So let's get that out of the way, because I took it step by step. But anyway, quarterback Aiden O'Connell had been sidelined with a broken thumb a month ago, but he's back as the starter now because Gardner Minshew's with a broken collarbone. O'Connell threw 2 touchdown passes, and Patrick Mahomes only threw 1. but kicker Daniel Carlson missed 3 of 4 field goals. Kickers are having a really bad season as a whole. There's a bunch of kickers that are struggling. He kicked 4 field goals and missed 3 of them, which negated a chance for the Raiders to actually take a lead in this game and possibly pull off the win in regulation without any drama at the end. The Raiders' defense played well enough to win. They held the Chiefs' run game in check, and they got after Mahomes with 12 bruising quarterback hits and 4 sacks. Unfortunately, after driving to the Kansas City 32, that's when everything started. So let's take this kind of step by step. Aiden O'Connell spiked the ball on 2nd down, stopping the clock. That made it 3rd and 3 with 15 seconds left in the game. After a short delay, which I don't know what caused that delay, but the Raiders finally huddled. But when they broke the huddle, there was only 10 seconds left on the play clock. When O'Connell noticed that the play clock was running down, he started clapping his hands to signal to the other players to hurry up and line up so we can get off the snap. Now, here's problem number 1. For whatever reason, wide receiver Jacoby Myers was taking his time lining up out wide. He's jogging out wide past the numbers or right around the numbers, but it's for whatever reason, he seemed to just be kind of taking his time. I don't know what. I know he knew the clock was stopped, so he probably didn't look at the play clock. Tight end Brock Bowers was yelling and waving at him, which you can clearly see if you look at the replay of the play on YouTube or whatever. And he's waving to him to back up because it looked like not only was he jogging out wide, but he was a little bit ahead of everybody else, which would have put him off sides. Problem number 2. Obviously, they had been going with a silent snap all game because of the crowd noise at Kansas City, which is, they're famous for their crowd noise. The right guard looks back and checks if the quarterback is ready. Then he taps the center on the hip, and then the center snaps the ball so they don't have to call out signals for the snap. So, of course, when they heard O'Connell clapping his hands, telling him to hurry up, the guard knew that he was ready for the snap. He tapped the center on his hip, and the center snapped the ball. Problem number 3, Bowers yelling and waving at Myers caught O'Connell's attention just before the guard tapped the center to tell him to snap the ball, and he was looking away, waiting for Myers to stop and get set before he could actually take the snap. But remember, you're not calling for the snap, bro. You already clapped your hands to tell them to hurry. The guard thinks you're ready. He can't see Myers. He taps the center. He snaps the ball. The ball bounces off your chest, hits the ground. A lineman kicked it because it looked like he was going to jump on it. A lineman kicked it. He missed it, and Chiefs linebacker Nick Bolton recovered the ball. Now, here's the deal. At first, the lineman, I guess it's the line judge that was over on the sideline, came running in toward the referee who's behind the quarterback, and he was making a signal like it was a false start. False start's a dead ball foul under normal circumstances. If the clock is running, meaning the game clock, not the play clock. But the game clock was stopped because the play before, you remember, they spiked the ball. So if the clock is not running, it converts to illegal shift. Okay? So the false start is a dead ball foul. They would have been able to keep the ball. But illegal shift is a live ball foul. So the play continues. So the fumble counted. That's what happened.
Oh, that's a good explanation.
I went through all kinds of stuff because I wanted to make sure I got it right. Because nobody seemed to know until maybe like 2 days later. I think it was Broussard who kind of tried to explain it on First Things First. So I started doing some research, and that's what I came up with. So that's what happened.
The Kansas City conspiracy theorists were just going crazy.
Yeah, I know, but that kind of shuts them up. Everything was legal. There was no fix
Well,
there.
that's good to hear. That's good to
Yeah,
hear.
yeah,
Good to
yeah.
hear. All right, all right.
Okay, now, like we always say, division games can be crazy, and the Bucks and Panthers game was just that. Baker Mayfield threw one touchdown pass and two interceptions. It's hard to win games when you give the ball away, but the Bucks defense had a hell of a time reining in Bryce Young. He was throwing the ball all over the place, like we said. Threw it too much, but he did rack up a lot of yardage. They did get 11 hits on him. That's what happens when you throw a lot of passes. You're going to take some hits. Uh, but they actually only sacked him once. The one constant on the Bucks offense was running back Bucky Irving, who slashed and dashed for 152 yards on 25 carries and scored a touchdown late in the fourth quarter to give the Bucks the lead 17-16. After that, they extended the lead to 20-16 on the Chase McLaughlin field goal. Then they lost the lead again when the Panthers scored another touchdown and needed McLaughlin to kick another field goal just to get into overtime at 23-23. They got the ball first. McLaughlin then missed the field goal, giving the ball back to the Panthers. Then the Chuba Hubbard fumble happened. They didn't recover it. The Bucks got it back, and this time McLaughlin connected on the field goal, and the Bucks won the game. Ah, whew, boy, that was a lot. Bucks got the bias. I'm going with the Bucks.
Going with the bias, going with the Bucks. That's a pretty big a bias, Benny, as we like to say. The Bucks are only favored by 6.5 points, according to Vegas there. So they're a little more conservative than what the net points would indicate. All right, next up, we have the Jaguars at Titan bias plus score 1.2 favors the Jaguars, Benny.
Interesting.
1.2.
Interesting.
Measly.
Yeah. Um, AFC South, two bottom feeders here, folks. Titans 3-9, Jaguars 2-10. Ugh. Jaguars going to have to travel. Let's see what happened here with their game last week. Oh, they played the Texans in Houston. So with 4:20 left before halftime, and the Jaguars down to the Texans only 6-0, Trevor Lawrence scrambled, took off for a 6-yard gain, and when he tried to slide, he got lit up by Texans linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair. That set off a bench-clearing brawl. Al-Shaair was ejected and was subsequently suspended just the other day for 3 games. Why did he get 3 games? Because he's had some other occurrences with some roughing penalties or unnecessary roughness penalties over the course of the season. So they lowered the boom on him this time, gave him 3 games. I'm sure he'll get a fine too, but I'm not sure how much that's going to be. Lawrence left the game, was diagnosed with a concussion. So in comes Mac and Cheese. Mac Jones took over quarterback. He couldn't get much going until 7:49 left in the fourth quarter. So it was late in the game, but he connected with Parker Washington on a touchdown pass, and then he threw another touchdown pass to rookie Brian Thomas. But the comeback fell short, and they lost the game 23-20. As for the Titans, quarterback Will Levis threw 2 touchdowns to Nick Westbrook-Akine, who's really been coming on lately in the last few games. He's scored touchdowns in, I don't know, their last 3 or 4 games. But anyway, this was a game they were playing against the Commanders. One of the touchdowns was in the second quarter, and one was in the fourth quarter. But with no help from their run game, Pollard or Tajay Spears couldn't get anything going. They only accumulated 247 total yards, and they got trampled by the Washington Commanders 42-19. This game might be a stinker, and it might be a good one too. I'm going to go against the bias and go with the Titans.
Well, it's interesting that you do that because this was one of the first times that Vegas was actually not going with the bias. Vegas is favoring the Titans by minus 3.5 points. So
yeah,
you
they have a more steady quarterback situation, and they're at home. That should be enough.
And I've watched at least 3 to 5 different shows go over the hit on Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
And I watched it over and over and over again. It's just a couple things. Number one, I do believe that once the quarterback starts running, he's no longer a quarterback. He's a runner, and you get treated like a runner. Trevor Lawrence, if you don't watch him, he will truck you at 6'5". He started going down, but he started going down like he could have slid right into that first down. And Zaire said, "No, we're not having that." And
you can't hit the guy when he gives himself up.
Well,
I don't care if he slides on one side of the first down marker and slides across it, they're going to put the ball where his butt hit the ground.
Well,
that's not a concern.
The thing that I say about right here, number one, I think they're describing the hit, because he came in with like elbows, but he went straight at his chest. The thing about Trevor is he's lanky. So as he was sliding, when he got hit in the chest, his head whipped back and bounced off the turf. So he didn't take a helmet to the head or nothing like that. He took a hit at a point where he was kind of giving himself up, and he just went straight down. And, so that's kind of how it happened. I didn't have a problem with the penalty and everything so much, but I do think that it has brought up, and I know Tom Brady is now talking about it, the conversation about the responsibility of the runner to protect himself, because it's not necessarily the responsibility of the defender. His job is to stop you at all costs. And if you don't want to get hurt, you need to go down. I had a bit of a conversation with our friend again, Mark Russell, and he did bring up one point I thought was interesting. He said that's one thing Jalen Hurts has learned, is when Jalen gets what he needs or whatever, if he sees it as not popping, he will slide now. And I've noticed that about him. So he protects himself pretty well there. So that conversation is going to be had. And then the last part was kind of funny, because there was this letter written from, I guess, the people who, I don't know what department it is, but John Runyon apparently is involved with this, safety thing, and was talking about maintaining the standards of the NFL. And somebody showed a short clip of John Runyon in a game where a guy's standing there, the play's over, and Runyon launches his helmet into the other guy's face. Mm-hmm. So it's just really ironic that this is the guy talking about maintaining NFL standards when he used to be known as one of the dirtiest players in the league.
And that was one of the arguments that the Texans coach and general manager had. They said that in his explanation of why they gave him the 3-game suspension and or fine or whatever comes up, in the interview, when he explained what he did and what he was going to do, he called Zaire a dirty player, and they took exception to that. Of course, he's their teammate, he's their player, he's on their team. They love him. He's probably loved in the locker room. He's probably a really good guy. That's how everybody was explaining. It's not like he's some kind of thug or something, okay? But they said in his explanation of what happened and why he was going to suspend him 3 times, they didn't like some of the words that Runyon used about him. It was kind of like a personal attack. So I kind of get where they're coming from, and he probably didn't have to do that. He could have just said, hey, we're going to suspend him. We're going to make it 3 games. He's had some other egregious stuff during the season. That's why we're making it 3 games, and we're going to fine him X amount of money and call it a day. He didn't have to say, there's no room for this kind of stuff. This guy's a repeat offender. He's this, he's that. You know what I'm saying? He kind of went off on him. So they took umbrage to that. But what are you going to do?
He also talked about his behavior after the hit as if when the people when the other team started to attack him, he was just supposed to go ahead and let them attack him. You know,
Yeah, right,
he wasn't supposed to stand up for himself or nothing like that. And that got a little
right.
weird too, you know.
Yeah,
He didn't jump up and initiate a fight. They literally jumped on him, you know.
yeah.
So
He at that point he had to protect himself.
yeah, and there's going to be that back and forth reaction. Glad to hear that Trevor Lawrence is supposedly okay.
Mm-hmm.
That head bouncing off the turf, we saw that with Tua. That's why Tua had to learn jujitsu so that he could learn how to fall without his head bouncing.
Yeah, well, it didn't help. Didn't help.
I think it might have helped a little bit.
Didn't help. Didn't make him any smarter, that's for sure.
In any event, you're going with the Titans going against the bias.
Yep.
Going with Vegas. All right, Benny. All right, we have Browns at Steelers. That would be a division game. Bias plus score of 21.5. That sounds a little heavy to me, but it's favoring those Steelers. What do you think there?
Well, it's big like that because the Steelers lit up the scoreboard. The Steelers, let me say this.
What started cooking?
Yeah. The Steelers' number one defense had a date with the Bengals' red-hot offense last weekend in Cincinnati. Ironically, the Bengals defense opened the scoring when Russell Wilson threw a pick six to cornerback Cam Taylor-Britt. But after that, Russ put the offense on his back, trading touchdowns with the Bengals and taking a 27-21 lead into halftime. So it was a rip-roaring first half. Wilson's touchdown pass to Pat Freiermuth at the end of the third quarter extended Pittsburgh's lead to 34-24. Before Cincinnati could respond, linebacker Peyton Wilson picked up a Joe Burrow fumble and ran it back for another score. That made it 41-24. That turned out to be way too much for the Bengals to overcome, and they ended up losing 44-38. Russ finished with a season-high 414 yards and 3 touchdowns. Great game for Russ. Really good win, division win again for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now the Browns, also in the AFC North, their trip to Mile High to take on the Denver Broncos turned into the good, the bad, and the ugly for Jameis Winston. The good, he threw for a Browns franchise record 497 yards and 4 touchdowns. The bad, he threw 3 interceptions. The ugly, 2 of them were returned for Denver touchdowns. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy had a career day. Also, with 9 receptions for 235 yards, which is the most. Here's a little sort of kind of obscure fact for you. 235 yards, the most in NFL history for a receiver against his former team. How you like that one? All that being said, between the Denver defense forcing 4 second-half punts and Winston's mistakes, the Browns were doomed to defeat. Take the Steelers in this one. I mean, people were kind of laughing at Jameis. He said he was going to pray to the Lord to deliver him from pick sixes, but he might have a few more coming against the Steelers defense.
I'm praying to have the Lord deliver me from pick sixes. I'm like, Jameis, stop it, will you? Holy mackerel, Andy. But again, still is my intriguing team doing some intriguing stuff there, man. I'm telling you. And then who was it? Was it you that said somebody said that they were going to give?
Yeah, let me. So I saw the guy in the gym, right? And he's like, remember what I told you? I was like, yeah, I remember you said Fields had his 6 games. He went 4-2. They were going to give Wilson 4 games, 6 games, see how he did. And then they were going to make a decision who was going to take them into the playoffs. And I said to you last week, I said, they've been winning, but he ain't tearing it up. Their offense is very methodical, it's run-centric. He's been doing just enough. He does throw a pretty long ball, which is something that Fields didn't have, but he wasn't really, putting himself really out there. Yeah, he was arguably better than Justin Fields. Some people still like Justin Fields. I'm sure there's people in that locker room that still like Justin Fields. But I think he knew that. And he had the perfect remedy, that mess, that dumpster fire that Cincinnati calls a defense. He went to work on them boys. And I'm not just going to say it's because they were so bad. Russell's got that in him. I think he's playing according to the teams that they play. He's doing what he's got to do to comfortably win games. I'm not saying he's holding back. You know what I mean? I might not be explaining myself properly, but he's the perfect quarterback for this team, crazy as it sounds. He's an old head. He's poised. He's super confident. He's everything they need. It's as if Tomlin put a uniform on and went out there.
And somebody else is paying for him. How perfect can you get?
Yeah. Well, it's a perfect situation for Pittsburgh that way, too. But I'm just talking about on the field.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you, you went the other way last week. But you know what I always say, if you don't have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. They got two quarterbacks. Push come to shove, they're not going to be afraid to put Fields in there and do what they can.
There's no room for fear. That's the situation they've set for themselves.
Right. So if Russ goes down for some reason, they're in a good position to keep the run going. And so it's just intriguing to watch them. In any event, as we move forward here, the bias plus score big time favorites the Steelers. The Vegas number on this is -6.5, favoring the Steelers. And Benny favors the Steelers. Am I correct?
That is correct.
All right. All the worlds are lined up at this particular point. How about a 4:00 slate of games, Benny? Ready?
Yes,
For the
sir.
evening group, we like the evening group on Red Zone because you get to see more of the games. Not so many games competing for your time. Seahawks at Cardinals, NFC West clash with a little teeny bitty bias plus score 1.5 favoring the Cardinals. They're close, and it favors the Cardinals, not the Seahawks. And this is a potential. Now, I do have some potential intriguing games, Benny. I didn't really mention them. The Lions game, Packers was potential. The Steelers game is a potential. And this Cardinals game is a potential intriguing game because that NFC West is tight.
Very tight.
Tight?
Yeah. Seahawks 7-5. Cardinals 6-6. Sheesh. Anyway, the Jets hosting Seattle was as bad a scenario as you can get for a West Coast team traveling to the East Coast for a 1:00 game. I believe it had something to do with the Seahawks not being able to get themselves together until they finally put together a drive and scored on a Geno Smith to tight end A.J. Barner touchdown 10 minutes into the second quarter, making the score 14-7. The game actually could have gotten away from them after the Jets scored another touchdown and the Seahawks fumbled the ensuing kickoff. The Jets then drove to the Seattle 9-yard line, threatening to score again, but that's when Aaron Rodgers threw that interception to Leonard Williams, and he returned it 92 yards for a pick six. The score stayed 21-16 until Jason Myers kicked a 43-yard field goal. That happened early in the fourth quarter. And then they drove down for a Zach Charbonnet touchdown run that had them put up 10 unanswered points in the second half and got them the win. Now, both the Cardinals and the home team Vikings failed to find the end zone in the first half of their game, but the Cardinals took a 9-6 lead into halftime, all field goals. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. did connect for a touchdown late in the third quarter, but 2 fourth quarter Kyler Murray interceptions ended up doing them in. I am going to go with Cardinals have the bias, right?
The Cardinals not only have the bias, Benny, but Vegas is favoring them by 2.5 points.
Favoring the Cardinals?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Because what I noticed is the Cardinals defense has been slacking off a little bit, and the Seahawks defense seems to kind of be coming on. So I'm going to go against the bias, and I'm going to go with the Seahawks. I like Geno to put up numbers, and I like the defense to hold Kyler down. Kyler's a bit more mistake prone than Geno is also.
Okay, going against the bias, going against Vegas, going with the Seahawks. All right, Benny, I see you. See you. Bias plus score of 18.3 favors the Bills over the Rams. Bills are going to head out west, Benny. It's going to be so hot, they're going to be passing out on the sideline. They're going to be wishing they had some snow to roll around in.
I don't think that's going to happen, but
Benny, my niece called me. She said, I don't think it's fair if they make the Niners play in that kind of weather. Like
fair? Wow.
Let me remind you some famous lyrics. All is fair in love and war.
That's right.
War right here. So
that was war, yes.
I even explained her the mile high advantage,
How about that? How about that?
Like every team has a little something at home that makes
That's
it
right.
home field advantage.
That's what home field advantage is all about.
That's what it's about. It might be the noise, it might be the altitude, it might be,
Yeah.
When they played down in Mexico, but what I understand, the altitude of that stadium was like well above Denver's altitude.
Right, which would affect both teams. But,
yeah. So,
and I'm sure it was pretty warm down there too.
I'm telling you. So, all right. So the Bills, however, are favored over those Rams, Benny.
Well, to tell you the truth, Rams are the home team. That means a trip to the West Coast is just what the Bills ordered. They get out of snow, get to go to LA, enjoy some warm weather. They're 10-2. They deserve it. So last weekend, they played your Niners, and they chin-checked those boys with 3 touchdowns in the first half. One of them was a first play of the possession, 65-yard sprint up the sideline by running back James Cook. Up 21-3 at the half, they kept pouring it on in the second half with 2 more touchdowns and a stifling defense that had 3 takeaways. Good win for the Bills. Well-coached game, well-played game by the Bills. Because they had to run in the snow too, but they handled it. The Rams now, they had trouble getting things going in the first half against the Saints. This seemed to be a theme last week. A lot of teams struggled in the first half. But anyway, the Rams were one of them. They struggled in the first half against the Saints in New Orleans, but their defense was solid, and they were only down 6-0 at halftime. They took the lead on the opening possession in the second half, and they never gave it up. Matt Stafford went to work, threw 2 touchdown passes. Kyron Williams ran for 104 yards, and he had a rushing touchdown. Good job by the Rams offense. In this particular game, I got to go with the Bills. I got to go with the bias and go with the Bills. They're really playing extremely well. I don't know this could be an intriguing game. I have a lot of respect for Sean McVay and what he's done with that Rams offense. The defense isn't terrible, but the Bills they're a machine right now. So I got to go with the Bills.
The Bills are only -4 according to Vegas, so it's a lot closer. Vegas has it going than what it looks like based on the net points and everything, especially when you add in turnover differential here. But it's all about Josh Allen. I really was disappointed in my Niners and questioning a lot of the play calling and the thing. I just remember a second down, and he had Purdy back there and an empty backfield spread deep. And I'm like, dude, Purdy can't throw the ball hardly, man. He's having a hard time handling the ball. Why are you first of all, why aren't you running the ball, right? This is the vaunted 49ers run game. All of a sudden, we have no run game. You're in the snow. This is where all of that stuff that you do is supposed to be, come to fruition, where I'm looking for, the misdirection here and the guy going there. I didn't see hardly any of that, and just the straight up power game wasn't working. Our line was not overpowering them. I told you I've been wanting to upgrade this line for a while.
That's the answer to your question right there.
The line?
Yeah. The best way to be successful with a run game in that kind of weather with snow on the ground is a straight ahead game. Not misdirections and counters and pulling.
The misdirections were difficult unless you're doing just a quick, type thing. But long story short, again, I'm looking for a run game, and because if your line's not overpowering, you got to do something to throw that defensive line off a little bit to try to get an edge. But it was hard.
Yeah, you pass block and you throw the ball.
Well, he couldn't throw the ball well. That was the problem.
Why couldn't he throw the ball?
Because he didn't affect. He's not great in bad weather. Okay, let's face it. He's just not great. So if you want, Josh Allen threw the ball a few times, but they ran the ball effectively.
Right, because their offensive line plowed your defensive line down. Well, they ran straight ahead.
That might be it, but that's my point. Number one, like I said, I've been wanting to upgrade it, but number two, if you don't have that line, then you got to do a little something, a little trickery, a little something to give yourself an advantage, and you still got to run the ball. And I just didn't think that. And I'll be quite honest with you, I had second thoughts about even McCaffrey in this game, because again, with the type of leg injuries he's had, I don't think running, that type of weather as maybe the first or second game back, I just question whether it's conducive to re-injury. And it seemed like it did. He did go down. He didn't even get hit. He just was running.
Bro, that's buyer's remorse, man. Huh? That's buyer's remorse. He didn't aggravate remorse. Yeah, he didn't aggravate his injury. He banged his knee on the ground.
He didn't even bang his knee. He was running.
Yes, he did. Go back and look at it.
When he went down?
Listen to me, Barry. He injured his knee on the play before he fell down.
Okay.
That's why he fell down.
All right. Well, again, I just think you're more prone to injury pulling a muscle or banging something in that type of weather.
It's for everybody.
Yeah, well, but we know his injury history. So, that's what I would have done. I can understand maybe you would have did something different.
Take your all-pro running back that you've been waiting all season to unleash and sit him down because there's some snow on the ground.
Man, look, we had some good running backs there. We lost Mason.
Yeah, and guess what? You still got one left.
Garando. Hey, are you using him on your fantasy?
I couldn't get him.
You couldn't get him, really?
I tried to get him. I was low on the waiver wire list, and
man,
other people got him ahead of me.
He's like the fastest guy on the team.
He's a good runner. That's like we always say. That's one thing that the 49ers can do.
Yeah,
they can find you some running backs.
Well, we're down to one, so he's gonna have to. They're gonna find some more running backs now. And
yeah, but again, that's another reason why they had to throw the ball. McCaffrey goes down, then Mason goes down. So now you're down to your rookie. You know what I mean?
Well, let me say this, and this is on our page. There's a few guys now that are getting chances to come back into the NFL with the numbers of injuries, especially to like running backs and linebackers and stuff like that. Detroit has a few, Quan Alexander, names like that, that all of a sudden coming back into the league who weren't necessarily on anybody's roster. So it's going to be interesting seeing who comes off the couch now at some of these positions at this particular point in the season. And I think this might be something that we'll see a lot more of now that we have a longer season. As they continue to try to extend the season out, 17 games to 18 games, there's going to be a point around this 14 to 15 game where the teams are beat up to the point where they're really now pulling up from their practice squads. And that's how they're bringing in the older players or the other players. They're bringing them into the practice squad, sticking them there, and then when they're ready, they're bringing them up to the regular squad. So let's just keep an eye out. I think we'll see increased numbers. That's what.
Yeah, this is that time of year as teams get ready to start preparing for the playoffs. They want to fill in some holes and things of that nature. The more we talked about this Niners game, the more I was thinking about what I saw. So I just real quick went back. Purdy only threw the ball 18 times. They ran the ball 27 times. So they did, in fact, try to keep the ball on the ground. The problem is they couldn't advance it. They kept having to punt. So it's not like they gave up on the run game. They didn't.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, I saw situations where I'm thinking you should be trying to run the ball, and I'm seeing Purdy.
Well, yeah, you're going to have differences of opinion on this down or that down.
Yeah,
and situationally, it's not like, play callers don't necessarily make mistakes or whatever. But for the most part, they understood that it was going to be difficult for him to throw the ball, just like you said. And they didn't really force it. He only threw for 94 yards. Yeah. That's nothing. So they tried to keep it on the ground to the detriment of being able to sustain drives.
Well, that could be true. And like I said, I didn't see that run offense that Kyle Shanahan is supposedly known for. And maybe
and you won't till they upgrade the line, like you said. It's not going to happen.
All right. Well, there you go. My beloved Niners. All right, Benny, you're going with the Bills. Let's move along here. Who's up next? And it's 4:00. So. Speak of my beloved Niners, Benny, the Bears have a bias plus score of 6.6 in their favor over my Niners. The Bears.
Oh boy, yeah, the Bears. Okay, we got some details to go into on this one too. So let
me give you this to throw in there just to screw up all your details. My bias plus score favors the Bears. Vegas favors the Niners -4.
And I'm not surprised at that.
Okay.
Niners are the home team. They're 5-7. They're not dead yet. They still got a chance to make the playoffs. It might not look good, but the opportunity is there. Bears are 4-8. They're not out of it yet either, but it's looking kind of grim if you really look at the way they've been playing. Anyway, in the Bears game, I was looking to see more progress from the improving Chicago offense, but all I got in the first half was 3 3-and-outs and 2 turnovers on downs. They were pretty inept. They finally got on the board on their first possession of the second half on a Caleb Williams to Keenan Allen 31-yard touchdown pass. Unfortunately, they were playing the Lions, and the Lions came right back on the next possession and scored a touchdown of their own. Now, down 23-7, the negative game script took the ground game away from Chicago and forced Caleb Williams to make something happen on his own. He threw 2 more touchdown passes, so he's up for the task. Threw 2 more touchdown passes in the fourth quarter, one to Keenan Allen, one to DJ Moore, that brought the Bears to within 23-20. The defense forced the Lions 3 and out and gave Caleb the ball back with 3:14 left in regulation. Now, listen to this. They drove to the Detroit 35-yard line with 36 seconds left. Let me see. Where are we at here? Chicago. Oh, okay. So before that, on a 4th and 14 at their own 46 with 56 seconds left in the game, Caleb Williams threw a pass to DJ Moore that got him a pass interference call. So it's a spot foul, automatic first down. Now it's 1st and 10 at the Detroit 25. There's 46 seconds left. Caleb Williams' pass to DJ Moore was incomplete. 2nd and 10, still at the Detroit 25. The Bears called a second timeout. Now, still 2nd and 10 at the 25. There's 43 seconds left. Caleb passes the ball to Keenan Allen and completes it, but they get an illegal use of hands penalty on one of the linemen. That takes them back to the 35-yard line. Now it's 2nd and 20. They're still in Detroit territory at the 35. There's 36 seconds left. Caleb gets sacked. That takes him back to the Detroit 41. Now it's 3rd and 26. Oh, God. There's no
bad sack too, man. I'm like,
yes, it was. But after the sack, no timeout is called by Caleb or from the sidelines. The Bears don't huddle. Caleb calls the play with hand gestures. If you go back and look at it, he's spinning his hands this way. And then everybody lines up. So they knew what the play was. Everybody's lined up and ready with 14 seconds on the clock. I checked it. But for some reason, the ball doesn't get snapped until 6 seconds and hits zeros. The clock hits zeros as the ball falls incomplete. So that crap that Caleb said about if we had completed the pass, then the whole thing would be different now. You didn't get rid of that ball in time enough for it to be caught and have time for another play or field goal or whatever. Just didn't happen. So that was a complete botch job. Needless to say, I posted that the coach should be fired before he gets to the locker room. Instead, they let him come back home. They let him give his post-game interview the next day. He did it over Zoom because they were out of town. And then they fired him after that. I don't know why they did that, but whatever. Anyway.
They even said they screwed that up.
Yeah. Maybe they didn't know how to handle it because supposedly in the history of the Bears organization, they've never fired a coach during the season. So I guess they don't have much practice doing it. Anyway, the Niners went to Buffalo, missing 5 starters due to injury. Early in the second quarter, all-pro running back Christian McCaffrey went down with a knee injury, and Jake Moody made a field goal and also missed on 2 other tries, and that left them down 21-3 at halftime. They did punch in a touchdown late in the third quarter, but they were never really in this one. I'm going to go with the Niners at home against the Bears. I think the wheels are starting to come off for the Bears. I did see improvement once the OC took over as the interim head coach, but it's kind of like what happened to the Jets interim head coach. He was the defensive coordinator. As soon as he took over as head coach, the defense kind of fell apart for the Jets. And now it looks like now that the OC is the interim head coach, the offense is starting to suffer a little bit. So anyway, go with the Niners against the bias.
Going against the bias, going with my Niners, my beloved Niners. This will have to remind people, again, these are not my numbers, so I can't do anything to favor the Niners. It's where they are was where they are.
You can't help them.
I can't help them much as I'd like to, man. Holy mackerel. And I know you said 5 starters, but there's about 12 players who are actually injured, so the depth is actually being impacted also.
Yes, yes, it is.
And my man check with the fumble. Oh my goodness, we were
Yeah,
going
you don't see
in.
that. That's something you don't see.
They don't see that too much. Okay, enough of that trauma. Then Sunday night, Chargers at Chiefs. Potential intriguing game right there.
Yeah. AFC West, baby.
AFC West and the bias plus score of 6.3 favors the Chargers.
We don't see that too often in a game the Chiefs are involved in.
Oh
Oh
my
boy.
goodness. Hardball.
Chiefs are 11-1, but the Chargers are 8-4.
Andy Reid.
Woo.
This is another
Okay.
one that went against the bias as far as Vegas is concerned. Chiefs are 3.5 point favorites.
Yeah, Vegas ain't gonna go against the Chiefs. That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. But how much is it though?
3.5.
3.5?
Yeah, not big.
Sounds to me like they're trying to get people to bet on the Chargers. That's the thing about that Vegas line, they adjust it according to the way they want the money to go.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the Chargers traveled to Atlanta last weekend. Unfortunately, they left their offense at home. They only accumulated, oh man, this is measly, 203 total yards and no offensive touchdowns. But their defense had 9 passes defensed and 4 interceptions. So again, that defense came up big. And the biggest thing about that defense, especially in our rankings, is they don't allow the other team to score much. But it's not, no, I'm sorry, I'm about to say something that's not true. They are very high in turnovers also, right?
And
They're near the top
Chargers
of
being a plus, plus or minus on the turnover thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Aren't they ranked like third or fourth?
The Chargers are plus 1.2. They're in one of the top rankings in terms of that. Let me just
Right, and they'll stay there too because they got 4 interceptions off of Kirk Cousins. Cornerback Tarheeb still ran one of those 4 interceptions back for a touchdown, and their kicker Cameron Dick converted 3 field goals, and they got the 17-13 win.
Yeah, they're ranked third. Plus,
I figured they were top 3. I thought top 3 to top 5. Yeah. So that just got enhanced. It might move them up to second place. Anyway, the Chiefs won a home game against division rival Las Vegas, but at the end, even they didn't believe it. They put the camera on Patrick Mahomes. After that mess up with the ball bouncing off of O'Connell's chest, and he had his hands on his head, like, what the heck just happened? They were resigned to the fact that they were going to lose that game. And lo and behold, anyway, Mahomes actually put up good numbers, but he was only able to score 1 touchdown on a pass to Justin Watson, who's like, at this point, like the 4th string wide receiver on their team, if not the 5th string wide receiver on the team. But anyway, he did that in the second quarter. Matthew Wright, who is now the 3rd kicker that the Chiefs have used this season, actually came through. He converted 4 out of 5 field goal tries, and holding a 19-17 lead, they watched the Raiders drive into position for a game-winning field goal before disaster struck for the Raiders, and we went over that in detail. Chiefs are at home. They're playing the Chargers. Chiefs aren't scoring a lot of points. Chargers don't give up a lot of points. Chiefs are struggling against the run a little bit. That was the Chargers' strength, but J.K. Dobbins is now on IR, so they got to go with Gus Edwards, who's a bit of a plotter, and I think they got a rookie behind him. I am going to go with the bias and put my trust in Justin Herbert and pick the Chargers to win this game.
That would be big. That's a big game. And again, that's why it's one of my potential intriguing games Chargers are playing so well. Chiefs are just not playing in that well. The Chiefs are even saying there's just a few things that we need to get right.
Yeah, every week it's a few more things.
A few more things, yeah. So, and at some particular point, their luck was, has to run out. I mean, how lucky can you be,
Yeah, that was.
Gee, Christmas. So,
You
okay.
can't sit back and wait for the other team to shoot themselves in the foot week after week.
Somehow they keep doing it, though. They keep shooting this.
Hey.
All right, Ben, you ready for Monday Night Football?
Yeah, another primetime game for the Dallas Cowboys. How about that?
Another primetime game for the Bengals at Cowboys. Bias plus score of 9.2 favors the Bengals. I don't know. I should have made this one of the intriguing games, except I don't trust either one of these two teams. So I'm just kind of left that alone.
Well, one thing's for certain. The Bengals can put points on the board. You gotta, if you don't believe in nothing else about this game, that can definitely happen. And if I'm not mistaken, unless things happen in the next couple of days, CD Lamb may not play. But anyway, the Bengals hosted the Steelers for another AFC North battle. Here's something I found interesting, or this was my thinking going into this game, because I believe I picked the Bengals to beat the Steelers, right? You remember that?
Okay. No,
I'm pretty sure I did. So in the 3 games for each team previous to this one, the Steelers defense gave up 27, 16, and 24 points in those 3 games. The Bengals offense scored 41, 34, and 27 points. So in my mind, the Bengals offense would be able to tax the Steelers defense, but the methodical Steelers offense might not be able to take advantage of the weak Bengals defense. Boy, was I wrong. Well, I wasn't wrong about Cincinnati's offense. Joe Burrow and his playmaking wide receivers went to work for 3 touchdowns and 309 yards through the air. But Burrow also turned the ball over 3 times. He doesn't turn that over, they can win this game.
Yeah.
And their defense was actually hot garbage. Russell Wilson and the Steelers offense racked up 4 touchdowns and 524 total yards. Are you kidding me?
It's cooking.
Oh, yeah. Who's the other team in this game? Oh, yeah, the Cowboys. Oh, God. Let me spare myself here. Cowboys hosted my team, the Giants. That was one of the Thanksgiving games. They beat the Giants 27-20. Cooper Rush threw 1 touchdown, and Rico Dowdle had a good game. He ran for 112 yards. He scored a touchdown on the ground. It was a solid offensive effort, but the defense was able to shine in this one because they were playing my Giants. They had 6 sacks, 14 quarterback hits, a fumble recovery, and a pick 6. So they looked real good, but that was against the Giants. I think Joe Burrow is going to come in here and decimate the Cowboys defense at home, and he might even cause Jerry Jones to make some hard decisions. I don't know. That's too hard to predict anything that Jerry Jones will do. But I'm going to definitely go with the bias and go with the Bengals in this one.
Going with the bias, going with the Bengals, using words like decimate, eh?
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Well, anyway, Ben, that will be the highlight of the weekend, Monday Night Football, which wraps up the Bias Plus report for NFL Week 14. But we have to go back to Week 13, Benny, just for a hot minute so that we can celebrate. Oh, I led up to the wrong thing here. That was a good lead up, though, wasn't it? Lead up.
That's okay. We got some teams on the bye.
For all you fantasy people, here you go. Ravens, Broncos, Texans, Colts, Patriots, and 70, Benny. Commanders.
This is a tough bye week for a lot of people in fantasy. Got a lot of major players here. Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Bo Nix playing well, as my man calls him, Bo Breeze, that Broncos defense, the Texans defense. Believe it or not, the Texans defense, when you watch them, they don't look so great. But when you look at the stats at the end of the game, them guys rank up some stuff, man. They got to be high on the turnover list too, I would think. But yeah, it's going to be a tough day in fantasy. Now it's a tough day in fantasy for me because when I drafted, a lot of players I took not only because I like the players, but because their bye week came so late. So I knew I could play them week after week, especially if they were stud players on my fantasy teams. But now I got to pay the piper. I don't have them. But fortunately, in most of my leagues, I've already built up a good enough lead that I'm playoff bound and I should be okay.
Okay, strategy. All right, so that's your bye week teams. That's your little fantasy footnote here. Little note from Benny's dropping these little nuggets of information for you. But what I was trying to lead up to, Benny, is the big time. The NFL Week 13 Bias Plus Buster of the Week, Benny.
Who did it? My Rams. I like the Rams. I just said I like Sean McVay. I like the Rams. If they could, I tell you what, the Rams are going to be dangerous next year if they can get a couple of pieces on defense. Because that offense, Matt Stafford still got it. Kyron Williams is the real deal. And Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are darn near unstoppable.
And, out of 16 games, you only missed 2. So you notice the bias plus Buster score is pretty low. Not up
Yeah.
30s like generally. So it's down around 10, which meant the only other team had a lower bias plus score. It was like 9 point something. So it was tight. But that wraps up. And again, congratulations to the Los Angeles Rams, our bias plus Buster of the week. All right, Benny. Phew, man. Through the schedule. I said earlier in the show that I did want to do a quick visit to our Facebook page. So if you have a moment, can we do that?
Yeah, sure.
Starting off, as I said, congratulating Travis Hunter for making first team, not second team, third team, first team academic All-American. I understand that he's about $2 million in on NIL money right now. That's about what his NIL value is. I understand he sent his girlfriend on a nice vacation and all of that kind of stuff. So these guys, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but the main thing is that this young man is doing it on the field and he's doing it in the classroom. So you can't ask for any more than that. That is just kudos to him on that. We always like those real life versus the dream stories, guys who get another chance. It says here from unemployed to unstoppable, Commander's second year RB Chris Rodriguez Jr. was just released 9 days ago and was promptly re-signed and elevated back to the active roster. You probably threw some of his stats out and I didn't even realize it. Did you mention him in your overview?
No.
Okay, all right. Well, we always like that. But
Yeah, he's a backup running back, I believe.
Yeah,
I think he went to Navy.
Really?
I think so. I could be mixing him up with somebody else, but
Well, when I was talking about guys getting another chance to get back in, names that we've heard before, Micah Hyde.
Okay.
Is one of those guys back in. We've heard every name. No, I'm gonna say we're still waiting to hear Corey Clement. We haven't heard that name.
Yeah, we haven't heard that.
Yeah, right.
But Micah Hyde's going back to his original team, the Bills.
Okay, that's his original team.
Yes.
All right. So, these are stories that we like to hear. And again, it's that time of year where the injuries has gotten to the point where the teams are looking to reach back, as much as they can. Here's your eliminated list, Benny. I did vet this list to make sure that it was correct. Giants, Raiders, Patriots, and Jaguars all eliminated at this particular point. So that's just what it is for right now. We talked about the NIL money. The Dion's sons bought him a mansion. Okay.
Like he needed a mansion.
Like he needed a mansion, but they're college kids. This is how much money these guys are bringing in NIL money. And it's just my point here was the kids have money that past generations could not imagine.
Right.
We had kids on top football teams and stuff scraping up to get enough money to eat at night. And then
Right.
guys are buying their parents mansions. So it's an amazing thing. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. This again is at the Ben and Barry on Football Facebook page. As we always say, thanks for following. Please leave comments and suggestions. Our hashtag is football is life. All right, Benny. Any last comments?
Just on the other end of you mentioning the teams that are eliminated from the playoffs, it's just become official that the Chiefs and the Bills have clinched playoff spots. They're the only two teams that have officially clinched. At this point, you've got your group of teams that are what they call in the hunt, and then you have your group of teams that they call on the bubble. So it still looks to me like there could be at least one, possibly two teams, obviously one in each conference, that could possibly have three teams in the division make the playoffs. One would be, I'm looking here. One would be maybe the NFC North, Vikings, Packers, Lions. And one would be, too hard to tell in the AFC. Too hard to tell in the AFC right now because too many are on the bubble. But yeah. So strange as it may sound, teams like the Bengals, your 49ers, even the Cowboys are not out of it yet. They still have a mathematical chance to make the playoffs. Unfortunately, they're going to need a lot of stuff to happen that's not in their control. So that makes
they're
it
actually
tough.
doing now. They're doing playoff scenarios for all the different
Yes.
teams. This team loses, that team loses. But
Yeah, it's too early for that though, because
no,
it's too
they're
much.
doing it.
No, it's not too early to do it. It's too early to talk about because it's too much stuff.
Too many possibilities. Too many
Yeah.
possibilities. But I did want to mention, as you said, we had the two teams that clinched the playoff spot, but you only have one team so far who've clinched the division, and that's the Buffalo Bills.
Okay.
So they have clinched their division. All right, I'm done. What
I'm
about
done.
you? Peace. Don't forget
Later.
to Ben and Barry on football.com. Take care.
Later.